I knew the air had turned stale the moment the front desk handed me a visitor badge with the word expired stamped across it. Not my name, not even guest. Just expired. 11 years at Solara Dynamics, holding the place together through layoffs, mergers, and 2 CEO turnovers. And now the building itself seemed to have decided I was past my shelf life. I was still straightening my blazer when Tessa Grange strode through the glass doors like she owned oxygen. Power walk, $1,000 heels that struck like a metronome, and that practiced grin that said she'd Googled executive presence on the flight in. She didn't acknowledge me when she passed. She didn't have to. You can always tell when someone's carrying a pink slip behind their smile. At 10:15, they called an emergency leadership alignment meeting. That's corporate for someone's about to bleed. I assumed I'd be briefing her on the Q4 rollout or maybe introducing her to the ops leads. Instead, I walked into the boardroom to find half the executive suite already seated, faces blank, waiting for something theatrical. Tessa stood at the head of the table, arms folded, expression sculpted into LinkedIn confidence. "Before we begin," she said brightly, "there's a small matter of structural realignment." I didn't even make it to a chair before she turned toward me, eyes gleaming with the thrill of public execution. "Lauren Mercer, your work has been appreciated, but we're moving toward a more agile era, one that doesn't include legacy roles." Someone audibly gasped, as if this were a live soap opera. Tessa tilted her head, her voice dripping with faux empathy. "Thank you for your service, but your time here has ended." I didn't blink. I'd buried 3 bosses better than her and built the operational skeleton she didn't even understand. But you can't teach geometry to someone who thinks charisma is a business plan. So, I smiled, tucked my badge into my bag, and said evenly, "Then I won't waste your time." The silence that followed could have suffocated a small country. I turned and walked out. Not a single person moved. The elevator doors closed, and only then did the corners of my mouth twitch. Because while Tessa thought she'd just cut off dead weight, she had no idea the closing prep calendar alert blinking in my phone meant I was about to become the most powerful former employee in Solara's history. 3 p.m. Keystone Capital, private suite. The one meeting she should never have ignored. 6 months earlier, while she was still spouting vision statements and restructuring middle management like chess pawns, I'd been quietly drafting something far more permanent, a leveraged acquisition framework routed through Keystone's shell vendors. It looked harmless on paper, 3 struggling logistics subsidiaries merging to survive, but buried inside were the threads of a full-scale takeover. My takeover. By the time the elevator hit floor 9, I'd already deleted Tessa's "Welcome to a New Era" email. By floor 5, I'd unsynced my Solara calendar. And when the doors slid open, I walked past the interns pretending not to stare, past HR pretending not to breathe, past security. Ben, who gave me the smallest, most knowing nod I'd ever received in 11 years. Outside, the air was sharp, the kind that wakes up the predator in you. I stepped into a black Lincoln and let the door shut behind me with the quiet finality of a gavel. The car moved, city blurring past, and I thought back to when I first met Davis Lang, managing partner of Keystone. 2 years earlier, over a bad cup of conference coffee, he'd told me he'd never invest in Solara unless it came with a full operational transplant. So I gave him one. Mine. Quietly. First, I helped Keystone restructure 3 subsidiaries on paper, underperforming shells that nobody at Solara would notice. Then, through them, we built a carve-out arm, an acquisition front that looked independent, legally airtight, and invisible to internal compliance. Every audit saw noise. I saw opportunity. Now, the game board was set. Tessa thought she was entering a new era. She just didn't realize she was walking straight into mine. Flashback to a rainy Tuesday 3 months earlier. Beige conference room. Midtown. Davis Lang leaned across the table. That quiet kind of intensity that only comes from a man who makes or breaks companies before lunch. "We can't move," he said, sliding me a stack of draft agreements, "unless we know the operation stays stable after the acquisition." No offense, Lauren, but you don't exactly scream private equity. I sipped my coffee, stared him dead in the eye, and said, "Then let me write the clause that does." He raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "I've spent a decade inside Solara's plumbing. I know which servers host the actual contracts, who keeps parallel spreadsheets, and where the board hides the real voting minutes. You want stability post-acquisition? You need me steering it from inside." He hesitated, calculating. "You'd be what, exactly?" "Controlling equity partner," I said. Silent until the call. Then loud. He smiled, slow and deliberate. "Cold." "No," I said, just prepared. That was the start. Now, back in the present, the town car cut through downtown traffic like it had diplomatic immunity. I didn't look back at Solara HQ. Let Tessa host her welcome luncheons, make her PowerPoints about synergy and rebirth. In 5 hours, that PowerPoint would be evidence in her own professional autopsy. The thing about being underestimated, it's a superpower. While they ignore you, you build. While they talk, you maneuver. And when they finally turn around, you're standing on their foundation, holding the deed. At 3 sharp, I stepped into Keystone's private suite. Polished oak, cold lighting, silence heavy with money. Davis was there already, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, like a surgeon preparing for a delicate procedure. He pushed a folder toward me. "Last one," he said. "This signs over operational control through the carve-out network. You sure you want your name on the public side? We can keep you internal only." I flipped to page 14, the clause I'd written myself. Section 7.2c, buried in a service agreement signed by Solara's own legal team 8 weeks ago. It linked the leveraged carve-out to a performance bond triggered automatically once Keystone hit majority stake. The threshold had cleared 3 days earlier. "I want my name on it," I said. "Tessa fired me in front of 10 people. I want her to recognize the name on the slide deck when it lights up her Zoom." He gave a low whistle. "You didn't come to play." "I came to finish." He signed, slid the pen across. My signature, Lauren E. Mercer, flowed clean and deliberate. Not triumph, not relief, just precision. The kind that anchors you. "Send the transition packet to the chairman," I said. "Title it, Operational Continuity Brief. Add Tessa's name under role pending review." Davis chuckled. "That's brutal." "No," I said. "That's structural." Back at Solara, she was likely hosting her first vision session in that glass room she renamed the Innovation Den, surrounded by frightened executives pretending to believe in synergy. I'd seen the leaked photo later. Tessa glowing like a motivational poster, slides filled with words like velocity and rebirth. She called for shedding outdated frameworks. She was talking about me, of course. An HR rep, bless her anxious heart, raised a hand mid-meeting. "Should we align this new strategy with the acquisition call tomorrow morning?" Tessa's answer? "They'll follow my lead." And just like that, the room nodded, because that's what rooms do when the air gets thin and the boss owns the oxygen. Meanwhile, 6 miles away, I was in Keystone's boardroom, sipping ginger tea under recessed lights. The final contracts were laid out, initials ready, timestamps already synced with the SEC filings. Davis looked up. "All yours, Lauren." I took the pen. "Let's make it official." By 4:12 p.m., My digital signature had transferred operational authority of Solara Dynamics to Keystone Capital, with me as its newly appointed operational partner. The woman Tessa fired at 10:15 a.m. had just bought her company by 4:12 p.m., and the best part? She wouldn't know it until the board call tomorrow morning. The next morning arrived sharp and electric, the kind of air that hums before a thunderstorm. In corporate terms, it was acquisition day. That meant suits pressed, coffee refilled twice before 8 o'clock a.m., and every executive quietly praying their name would land on the retained list instead of restructured. Solara's 18th floor conference suite, normally reserved for quarterly snooze fests, had been converted into mission control. Monitors everywhere, untouched catering trays, and an overconfident CEO sitting dead center under a ring light. Tessa Grange had insisted her chair be raised 2 inches taller than everyone else's for optics. Classic Tessa, believing symbolism could fix incompetence. The call was set for 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. By 8:50, the participant list looked like a corporate Oscars. Investors from Zurich, compliance counsel from Boston, analysts from Chicago, and every Solara board member who could spell liability. I watched from Keystone's private suite, 2 floors beneath their headquarters in Manhattan. Davis adjusted his cufflinks, gave me a quick nod, and hit join. On the screen, the familiar blue glow of a Zoom grid filled with high-strung faces. The chairman of Solara, Edward Langley, appeared in the main window. A man whose voice carried the gravity of 3 decades and 2 hostile takeovers. "Thank you all for joining," he began evenly. "Today marks a defining step in Solara's future. We are finalizing controlling ownership transfer in accordance with prior agreements." Tessa leaned forward in her chair, that polished grin barely hiding her nerves. She probably expected applause. The chairman continued, "As of this morning, the controlling entity of Solara Dynamics is Keystone Capital, and I'm pleased to introduce their appointed operational partner, effective immediately." He paused, a beat longer than usual. Then the screen updated. "Lauren E. Mercer, operational partner, Keystone Capital." My camera came on. The room behind me gleamed in neutral wood tones, the lighting soft but deliberate. The reaction was instant. Tessa's smile froze mid-pixel. Eyes widened, lips parted, expression caught between confusion and panic. Then, faintly, into her mic. "No, it can't be." That silence? It wasn't technical. It was existential. "Thank you, Chairman Langley," I said calmly, "and thank you to all stakeholders for your continued confidence. I look forward to ensuring a seamless transition as we align Solara with Keystone's operational framework." I didn't look at Tessa. I didn't have to. In the side panel chat, messages began to pop like gunfire. "Wait, Lauren? Didn't she get terminated last week? Operational partner? What the hell is happening?" Tessa's cursor hovered helplessly over her screen, probably hunting for a mute life button. The chairman continued, unbothered. "You'll find the transition materials in your inbox. The floor now goes to Ms. Mercer." I clicked share screen. My deck loaded instantly. 42 slides, color-coded, time-stamped, legally bulletproof. The first slide read, "Executive Transition Plan, Keystone Integration, Phase 1. And right below it, Tessa Grange, CEO. Role pending review." The air in that virtual room evaporated. "Slide 2, I said smoothly, outlines departmental realignments. Risk and compliance will now report directly to Keystone's advisory board. Performance evaluations will begin Monday." Slide 3 followed. Retention metrics, leadership viability, projected redundancies. Slide 4 was the knife. Performance index, leadership viability, insufficient, strategic direction, non-determinant, retention rating, unfavorable. It was clinical, sterile, unarguable. Every data point sourced from internal documentation. Every metric verified by Solara's own audit logs. Someone's mic picked up a shaky exhale. Another muttered, "Oh my God." Tessa finally unmuted, her voice tight. This This must be a misunderstanding. I wasn't informed of any— Ms. Grange, interrupted Chairman Langley, tone calm as a scalpel. Please hold your comments until the agenda concludes. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't look up from my slides. As of this morning, I continued, transfer protocols under Clause 7.2c are complete. All governance authority now falls under Keystone Capital's operational supervision. That includes review of current executive structures. No one interrupted. Not even legal. Tessa sat frozen on screen. Still, wide-eyed, her confidence disintegrating pixel by pixel. The board had finally met the woman she fired 3 days ago. And this time, I had the microphone. At 9:36 a.m., the chat sidebar was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Pending review, one board member typed. Wasn't she just appointed CEO last week? Another message popped in. Is this accurate, Lauren? I didn't respond. I just advanced to the next slide, letting the data speak for itself. It was the cleanest execution of silence I'd ever orchestrated. Tessa's frame on the call looked like a still photo, eyes unfocused, breath caught somewhere between fury and disbelief. The woman who'd strutted into Solara HQ calling herself a change catalyst now looked like a malfunctioning startup demo. Slide 5, I said evenly, details current compliance inconsistencies under the prior administration. The word prior landed like a dropped gavel. As you'll see, multiple documentation delays have led to operational gaps. These will be addressed immediately under Keystone oversight. Her voice cracked through the speakers. Lauren, this isn't— You can't just— Chairman Langley cut her off again. Ms. Grange, please remain muted until the close of agenda. Muted mid-sentence. The boardroom equivalent of a guillotine. From Keystone's side, Davis leaned back, arms folded, half smirking. Clean, he mouthed silently. I kept going, my tone steady, almost surgical. Slide 6, Integration Timeline. Departmental reviews begin next Monday. Risk management reports directly to me. HR reorg by end of month. Every bullet point was a hammer blow, each one verified, time-stamped, and cross-signed by 3 law firms, including Solara's own counsel. Because that's the thing about power. If you build it with paper and patience, no one can argue when the ink dries. By 9:43 a.m., the word confirmed had been said 6 times. Each one chipped away at Tessa's throne like a sculptor carving her out of relevance. That's when Sadie Benton, Keystone's general counsel, unmuted, crisp navy suit, tone cool as metal. As of 8:00 a.m. Eastern this morning, she said, Keystone Capital completed its acquisition of a controlling interest in Solara Dynamics via structured carve-out transfer. All filings have been verified, notarized, and lodged with the SEC. Clause 7.2c is active. Operational control rests with Keystone's appointed partner, Ms. Mercer. Translation? The takeover wasn't theoretical. It was already done. The silence that followed was holy. You could hear someone's pen drop in soul. Then came the first ping. Congrats, Lauren. About time. Welcome back. Couldn't think of a steadier hand. Each message landed like a digital signature of validation. I didn't smile. I just said, thank you, and kept moving through the deck. Tessa tried again. At 9:49, her mic flickered to life, her voice trembling beneath a thin layer of corporate polish. I have serious concerns about how this transition was handled. There are governance protocols. Ms. Grange, the chairman interrupted gently but firmly. You are still listed under role evaluation. Please withhold remarks until the board confirms your standing. Her microphone clicked off again. For good this time. It wasn't rage I felt. It was quiet symmetry. The same woman who once told me legacy doesn't belong in leadership had just become legacy herself. I advanced the final slides. Transition metrics, compliance audit timeline, and post-acquisition alignment. Please note that all leadership evaluations are ongoing and subject to Keystone review. No one argued. No one even blinked. The hierarchy had flipped so smoothly it was almost elegant. By 9:58, the meeting's energy had shifted completely. What began as Tessa's coronation had turned into her corporate funeral. Except this time, the eulogy came in PowerPoint form. Chairman Langley closed with his usual calm. "We appreciate everyone's time. Action items will be distributed by Ms. Mercer's team. This meeting is adjourned." Cameras winked off, one by one. Tessa's screen froze, then vanished. I sat back, exhaled slowly, and looked out the window. City skyline gleaming like it was in on the secret. In 11 years at Solara, I'd been called meticulous, stubborn, obsessive. Turns out all three were just synonyms for prepared. I hadn't destroyed the company. I'd preserved it, minus one liability named Tessa Grange. They say you can tell when someone realizes they've lost. Their posture changes. Their eyes stop moving like they're scanning for exits, and their hands start fidgeting with anything that might still give them control. That was Tessa an hour later. Gone was the glossy, high-heeled commander of vision and synergy. What walked into the post-call meeting was a woman who finally understood gravity. The conference room was the same one where she'd fired me 3 days before. The same sleek oak table, the same frosted glass walls overlooking downtown. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I was already there, seated at the head, tablet open, pen aligned perfectly parallel to the folder in front of me. I didn't rise when she entered. I didn't need to. She hesitated by the doorway, like the oxygen had turned into quicksand. "Lauren," she began, her tone wobbling between confusion and defiance. "What is this?" "Closure," I said simply. "Have a seat." She sat, stiff as rebar. The silence stretched just long enough for the HVAC hum to sound like applause. "You'll remain on payroll through Friday," I said, my tone purely administrative. "After that, you'll transition into a non-executive advisory capacity. Remote, limited visibility." Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me? You'll retain benefits for 90 days. NDA clauses remain in effect. Statements to media or staff will refer to your strategic consulting partnership during organizational realignment." Her mouth twitched. "You're firing me." "No," I said, pushing the leather folder across the table. "You've already been removed." She opened it. Inside lay a single page. A highlighted excerpt from her own executive employment contract. Clause 14.2, second paragraph. "Termination may be executed at the sole discretion of the controlling ownership entity without cause or prior notice upon realignment of operational oversight." Her eyes scanned the words twice, then a third time, as if repetition might change reality. "This isn't fair," she said finally, voice trembling. I tilted my head. "You were brought in under a structure that no longer exists." She stared down at the page like it might rearrange itself into mercy. "I didn't even know Keystone had that kind of authority." "You didn't read your contract," I replied. "You signed it." She exhaled sharply, eyes glassy. "I'm not the villain here. I never said you were," I said. "But the chair you sat in doesn't care about villains or heroes. It only cares who read the fine print." She closed the folder slowly, fingers trembling. "You planned this, not the way you think," I said. "You planned your empire on buzzwords. I built mine on structure." I stood up, not fast, not dramatic, just final. "HR will reach out by noon with your offboarding packet. You're not required to respond." She didn't speak, didn't follow me with her eyes as I turned toward the door. Her reflection in the glass looked smaller than I remembered, like someone who'd been shrunk to fit the scale of her own oversight. The corridor outside felt colder, cleaner. My heels clicked with the rhythm of inevitability. It wasn't triumph, it was confirmation. For years, I'd carried Solara's bones while people like Tessa chased slogans. Now, the bones were mine. Over the next few days, the company began to hum again, like a machine recalibrating after a power surge. Meetings started on time. Slack channels turned quiet, professional. Even the interns smiled more. Small, careful smiles. The kind that say the storm passed, and I'm still here. No one mentioned Tessa by name. They didn't have to. Her office, glass, immaculate, sat empty, blinds half drawn like an unspoken warning. Then came Friday. HR quietly escorted her out, badge deactivated. No public announcement, no goodbye email. The woman who once declared a new era left through a side elevator. That afternoon, I walked the executive corridor alone. The light hit the polished floor in long silver bands. At the end of the hall, the door to the boardroom stood open, the same door she'd closed behind me when she said, "Your time is over." Now, it was hers. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered it. Sleek oak table, spotless glass walls, the faint citrus scent of corporate disinfectant trying to mask old ambition. The chair she'd insisted be raised 2 inches taller than the rest still sat at the head, casting a smug little shadow on the carpet. I paused at the doorway, not out of sentiment, but acknowledgement. This was where everything had cracked open, where a single sentence from Tessa, "Your time is over," had tried to define the rest of my life. I stepped inside. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the ceiling vents and the faint whisper of my heels on tile. I placed my tablet on the table, pulled the tall chair back with one hand, and sat. No applause, no cinematic triumph, just leather creaking softly beneath the weight of inevitability. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was directing. The irony was delicious, but not sweet. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about alignment. The kind corporate memos pretend to describe, but never understand. I looked out across the table, imagining the faces that had watched me pack my bag 3 days earlier. The ones who had avoided eye contact, who had half nodded in sympathy, but said nothing. I didn't resent them. That's how corporate ecosystems work. Self-preservation first, conscience later. But they'd learned something from this, every one of them. That silence has consequences, and structure always wins over spectacle. A soft chime from my tablet broke the thought, an internal message from Davis. Subject: Leadership Update Live. Body: Site updated. Congratulations, Chair Mercer. I opened the company site in a new tab. Sure enough, the leadership page had quietly changed. No announcement, no press release. Just a clean white layout with the words, Lauren E. Mercer, Executive Chair, Strategic Oversight. No acting, no interim, just final, as if it had always been there. Tessa's name was gone, not buried on a former leadership page, not archived. Just deleted, like the system never recognized her login. I leaned back in the chair that used to be hers and let the screen's glow wash over me. 11 years of invisible labor, every crisis I'd patched, every policy I'd rewritten, all of it had built to this moment. Outside the glass, I could see the city alive and indifferent. People rushing to lunch meetings, taxis honking, coffee carts steaming, business as usual. And that's exactly what I wanted, for this to be normal. Keystone hadn't just bought Solara. It had re-engineered its heartbeat. The chaos was gone, replaced by something quiet, disciplined, operational. My kind of order. Across the hall, I could hear muted conversations, the new HR director coordinating department rollouts, IT finishing access changes, facilities swapping out the nameplate on the door. The system was already adapting, self-healing like a code base after a clean patch. I opened my notebook and began writing my first executive directive. Phase 1. Stability. No rebrands. No new era slogans. No rallies about vision. Just work. Steady, quiet, competent work. Phase 2. Reinstatement. Reinstate the people who kept the machine running when no one noticed. Analysts, coordinators, the ones who cleaned the data and closed the loops. Phase 3. Prevention. No more unchecked hires from consulting firms who think disruption is a synonym for ignorance. Each line came out calm, almost meditative. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration. By evening, the building had settled into a kind of calm hum. The same air that once buzzed with tension now carried something else. Respect, maybe, or relief. I stood, straightened my blazer, and gathered my things. Before leaving, I turned toward the chair one last time. The same seat that had once symbolized authority now looked ordinary. Power never lives in furniture. It lives in understanding who built the floor it stands on. As I walked out, I passed facilities quietly replacing the brass plaque outside the boardroom. They peeled off the old nameplate, Tessa Grange, Chief Executive Officer, and pressed on a new one, Lauren E. Mercer, Executive Chair. For a brief moment, the metal caught the light just right, reflecting the word chair onto the wall behind it like a signature of completion. Funny thing about time, it only runs out when you don't own the clock. By Monday, the transformation was complete. No press storm, no viral post, no leaks to the trade blogs. Just a quiet, methodical reshuffling that looked so seamless it felt inevitable. In the lobby, the receptionist who once handed me a badge labeled expired now greeted me with a steady, respectful smile. The new tag read Executive Access, Mercer, a small rectangle of laminated irony. Solara Dynamics felt different, not louder or grander, just functional. Calm. The gossip evaporated, replaced by focus. The operations floor that used to echo with performative energy now hummed like an engine tuned just right. People worked. Systems moved. For once, things made sense. I walked through the corridors like a ghost that finally decided to stop haunting. Every corner whispered reminders of the years I'd spent in the background. The compliance room where I used to double-check vendor audits at 2 a.m., the server bay I'd personally labeled when I'd lost its documentation, the finance office where I'd built templates now used by departments that never learned my name. None of it was bitter anymore. It was just history, finally arranged in the right order. Tessa didn't return after that Friday. Her personal effects were boxed and couriered to an address in Austin. She didn't ask for a reference, and I didn't offer one. HR said she left quietly. No farewell message, no parting speech. The kind of silence that sounds like someone finally learning humility. A week later, the company issued a short press release. Solara Dynamics announces successful transition under Keystone Capital ownership. Executive Chair Lauren Mercer will oversee ongoing stabilization and operational realignment. That was it. No mention of her name. Just progress. When the announcement went live, I sat in my office, her former office, reading the statement on my phone. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now in the same seat that once declared I was obsolete. But instead of savoring it, I felt something quieter. Fulfillment without gloating. A knock on the door broke the thought. It was Ben, the security guard who had nodded at me the day I left. He stepped inside, cap in hand. "Congrats, Ms. Mercer. Feels right seeing you back here." "Thank you," I said. "It feels balanced." He grinned faintly. "Guess the building knew you weren't done yet." When he left, I turned toward the window. The skyline shimmered under the afternoon sun, glass towers stabbing the sky like ambition frozen in architecture. Down below, the street pulsed with movement, people chasing something, some purpose, some next step. And for once, I wasn't chasing. I was steering. Later that evening, Davis called from Keystone's headquarters. "Transition looks clean," he said. "Board's happy. No fallout." "Good," I replied. "That's how stability should look. Boring." He chuckled. "You know, most people would have made this loud. Press conferences, social posts, champagne. I'm not most people," I said. "You don't celebrate structure. You maintain it." There was a pause on the line. Then his tone softened. "You know, Lauren, I've seen a lot of takeovers. This felt earned." After he hung up, I sat in the quiet office until the lights dimmed automatically at 7. My reflection in the glass looked steady, unfamiliar only because it wasn't burdened anymore. I thought back to that moment in the elevator, the hum of the descent, the quiet certainty that something was ending. I hadn't known then that endings could feel this calm. I gathered my tablet, slipped it into my bag, and walked toward the elevator. The halls were nearly empty, just the soft murmur of janitors and the distant buzz of servers. As I passed the boardroom, I slowed. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, the same oak table gleamed under the dim lights. My chair, the chair, stood at its place, perfectly centered. I stepped in one last time and placed a small brass key on the table. The original office key I'd carried for 11 years, the one I refused to return the day she fired me. It wasn't defiance anymore. It was punctuation. The end of the sentence. I turned to leave, but paused at the doorway, looking back just once. That room had witnessed endings, power shifts, humiliations, and quiet reckonings. But beneath all that, it had also seen endurance. The kind that doesn't need applause, just acknowledgement. "Funny thing about timing," I whispered, echoing my own words from days earlier. "It only runs out when you don't own the clock." Then I closed the door, and for the first time in 11 years, it felt like mine.